Chapter 1. The Rule Everyone Ignored. The lecture hall of the Galactic War Academy could hold nearly 3,000 cadets, yet a rare silence filled the vast chamber. Rows of future commanders from dozens of worlds sat beneath a ceiling alive with drifting holographic stars. Some species towered over their seats. Others occupied floating platforms or nutrient tanks. Despite their differences, all eyes faced the enormous display at the front. A single image rotated above the instructor's podium. A human. The title beneath it read, Historical Military Catastrophes. Why You Never Provoke Humans. A few cadets chuckled. One of the younger officers raised a clawed hand. Professor, is this another one of those old military myths? Laughter spread through the room. The instructor, a grayscale veteran named Terrell, waited for the noise to fade. It is not a myth. Another student leaned forward. Humans haven't fought a major war in over a century. Correct. So why are they still considered dangerous? The professor touched the control panel. The display changed instantly. Images of ruined fleets appeared. Burning worlds. Shattered armadas. Defeat after defeat. Each belonged to a civilization that had once challenged humanity. The mistake, Terrell said calmly, is assuming danger is measured by aggression. The room quieted. Humans rarely start conflicts. They negotiate endlessly. They compromise. They tolerate insults longer than most species consider reasonable. A student from the core systems frowned. That sounds weak. Terrell smiled. That assumption destroyed empires. The hologram shifted again. Numbers filled the room. Fleet ratios. Economic comparisons. Population statistics. Every historical enemy had possessed advantages. Larger militaries. Better technology. Greater resources. Yet every campaign ended the same way. Human victory. How? Someone asked. Terrell folded his hands behind his back. Because humans never fight the war you prepared for. No one laughed now. Corner them, and they adapt. Pressure them, and they innovate. Threaten those they protect, and they become relentless. He paused. Galactic military doctrine contains one universal rule. The display changed to a single sentence. Never bother humans. Far from the academy, another observer watched the lecture unfold. Supreme Director Vaylor Kryn sat alone inside the command chamber of the Caraxi Dominion. The transmission ended. He snorted. Ridiculous. His advisor, Minister Serac, shifted uneasily. The academy continues to teach the rule because history supports it. History supports superstition, Vaylor replied. He rose from his chair and walked toward a panoramic window overlooking hundreds of warships. The Dominion had expanded across dozens of systems under his leadership. Every rival had fallen. Every obstacle had yielded. Only one power consistently blocked further growth. Humanity, not through military threats, through influence, trade agreements, diplomatic alliances. Everywhere Vaylor looked, humans stood between him and greater authority. What irritated him most was their reputation. A species that preferred negotiations somehow commanded fear across the galaxy. He found it absurd. Tell me, he said without turning around, was the last time humans demonstrated this legendary strength? Serac hesitated. They haven't needed to. Vaylor laughed. Exactly. To him, the answer was obvious. The story survived because nobody had challenged them recently. Legends grew larger with time. Reality rarely matched them. Meanwhile, aboard Citadel Prime, Commander Elias Ward reviewed a stream of reports inside his office. Unlike many military officers, he preferred simplicity. No trophies, no decorations, only work. A soft chime interrupted his concentration. Enter. Lieutenant Marachin stepped inside, carrying a datapad. Something strange is happening along Corridor 7. Elias looked up. Pirates. Maybe. She placed a report on his desk. 3 cargo vessels disappeared during routine transit. His eyes scanned the data. The losses weren't catastrophic. Not yet. Still, the pattern bothered him. The ships had vanished from separate sectors. 2 organized for random accidents. 2 clean for ordinary criminals. Any distress signals? None. That answer bothered him even more. Elias leaned back. Expand surveillance coverage. You think someone is testing us? Maybe. Several hours later, he stood before a strategic display showing frontier trade routes. Small disruptions continued appearing across multiple regions. Navigation relays malfunctioned. Communications briefly failed. Supply shipments arrived late. Individually insignificant. Collectively suspicious. Someone was probing weaknesses. The question was who. The answer arrived days later. Deep inside Dominion territory, Vaylor approved a classified operation. Nothing dramatic. Nothing that could justify war. Just enough pressure to create instability. Merchant traffic would suffer. Infrastructure would experience unfortunate failures. Human systems would become uncomfortable. Officially, the Dominion would remain innocent. Unofficially, everyone involved understood the objective. Test humanity. Measure their response. Discover whether the legends were real. Back on Citadel Prime, evidence slowly accumulated. Elias reviewed fresh intelligence and reached an uncomfortable conclusion. The Dominion's fingerprints were everywhere, carefully hidden, but present. One of his officers slammed a hand against the conference table. We should hit back. Several others agreed. Elias remained calm. No, the room fell silent. They want a reaction, he continued. We're not giving them one. So we do nothing. We investigate. We document. Then we confront them through diplomatic channels. The officers exchanged frustrated looks. Elias understood their anger. He simply refused to let anger make decisions. Hours later, a formal protest was transmitted to the Dominion. No threats, no military mobilization, only evidence and a request for cooperation. When the message reached Vaylor, he laughed harder than before. Humanity had done exactly what he expected. Complaints, paperwork, negotiations, nothing more. He stared out at his growing empire and felt certain of his conclusion. The galaxy's famous warning was nothing but fear wrapped in tradition. And if humans truly were this passive, then removing them from his path would be easier than anyone imagined. He turned toward his advisors. Prepare the next phase. For the first time in centuries, someone had decided to ignore the rule, and the galaxy would soon learn why it existed. Chapter 2. Mistaking patience for weakness. 3 months after the first incidents, the disruptions had evolved into something impossible to dismiss. Trade lanes remained open, but barely. Freight vessels vanished more frequently. Mining facilities suffered mysterious accidents. Automated refineries experienced coordinated system failures. Every event appeared isolated on paper. Together, they formed a clear pattern. Someone was applying pressure. Commander Elias Ward stood inside the Strategic Response Center aboard Citadel Prime, studying a rotating holographic map of the frontier. Red markers multiplied across human-controlled sectors. Lieutenant Marachin stepped beside him. We confirmed another attack. Elias looked at the report. What happened? Or Processing Station 17. Reactor safeguards were sabotaged remotely. Casualties? None this time. Elias nodded slowly. The words this time lingered in the air. Across the room, analysts worked through endless streams of intelligence. Every new report pointed toward the same conclusion, the Dominion, yet nothing provided absolute proof. Whoever organized these operations understood exactly how far they could go without crossing legal boundaries. For now, elsewhere, political frustration continued to grow. Inside the Galactic Accord Assembly, representatives from dozens of worlds argued openly. A senator from the Varian Collective slammed a fist onto his desk. How many attacks are required before someone acts? Several delegates agreed immediately. Others turned toward the human delegation. One ambassador spoke bluntly. With respect, your government keeps promising investigations. Where's the response? The question spread through the chamber. Humanity's reputation had always carried weight. Many species believed humans possessed hidden strength, yet every new attack seemed to challenge that belief. The humans remained calm. Too calm. Rumors began circulating through diplomatic circles. Perhaps humanity had become complacent. Perhaps centuries of peace had softened them. Perhaps the legend belonged to a different era. Those whispers eventually reached Vaylor Kryn. The Supreme Director enjoyed every word. Standing before a gathering of military commanders, he watched intelligence reports scroll across a massive display. Economic losses, political tension, growing uncertainty. Everything progressed exactly as planned. They are unraveling themselves, one commander said. Vaylor smiled. No. The officer looked confused. They are showing the galaxy who they truly are. And who is that? A civilization hiding behind stories. Confidence filled the room. For the first time, even some of Vaylor's skeptical advisors began believing him. Meanwhile, Elias boarded a diplomatic shuttle bound for a neutral station near Dominion space. The meeting had taken weeks to arrange. The purpose was simple. One final attempt to prevent escalation. Inside the conference chamber, Dominion representatives waited around a circular table. The atmosphere felt cold before anyone spoke. Elias activated projection. Evidence filled the room. Intercepted transmissions, movement records, financial trails. Nothing definitive alone. Damning when combined. A Dominion official glanced at the display, then leaned back. Interesting theory. Elias remained expressionless. It isn't a theory. We disagree. You funded proxy groups. No. You supplied equipment. No. You directed operations. No. Every answer came with practiced ease. The conversation continued for nearly an hour. Nothing changed. Finally, Elias deactivated the display. Silence settled over the chamber. One representative smirked. Are we finished? Elias met his gaze. Every civilization receives opportunities to correct its mistakes. The smile faded slightly. Is that a threat? No, Elias replied. It's a warning. The meeting ended moments later. No agreements. No progress. No peace. Back in Dominion territory, Vaylor reviewed the encounter. He laughed. A warning. His advisors joined him. One asked, Do you think they'll retaliate? Vaylor walked toward the observation window, overlooking his fleet. No. The answer came instantly. They could have acted already. That certainty led him toward a more dangerous decision. Days later, Dominion operatives launched a new operation. Unlike previous actions, this target carried civilians. The frontier colony of Havens reached supplied medical materials to multiple Allied systems. Its importance wasn't military. It was humanitarian. Under cover of darkness, armed raiders struck storage facilities and transport hubs. Explosions tore through warehouses. Emergency shelters collapsed. Rescue teams worked through burning debris. By sunrise, hundreds were dead. Official reports blamed pirates. Nobody believed them. News spread across the galaxy within hours. Elias arrived the following day. Smoke still drifted from shattered structures. Medical workers moved through temporary treatment centers. Families searched casualty lists. Children sat alone, waiting for parents who would never return. A young survivor tugged at Elias' sleeve. Are they coming back? The question hit harder than any battlefield report. He knelt beside the child. No. The answer felt brutal. The child lowered her head. Elias remained there for several seconds before standing. For the first time since the crisis began, anger pushed against his restraint. Not because infrastructure had been damaged. Not because trade had suffered. Because innocent people had paid the price. That evening, he stood alone inside a command room aboard his ship. Mara entered quietly. You should get some rest. Elias stared at the casualty report. I keep hoping they'll stop. They won't. He knew she was right. Still, humanity's principles demanded one final attempt. One last chance. Hours later, a secure transmission left Citadel Prime. Unlike previous messages, it contained only 2 words. No evidence. No arguments. No diplomacy. Just a final opportunity. The message arrived directly on Vaylor Crin's private terminal. He opened it immediately. Stop now. For several seconds, he stared at the screen. Then he smiled. A slow, confident smile. To him, the message confirmed everything. Humanity was desperate. Humanity was frustrated. Humanity was bluffing. He turned toward his waiting advisors. Prepare the convoy operation. The room fell silent. Even some officers looked uneasy. The next target would be far larger than anything before, far more visible, far more dangerous. Vaylor ignored their concerns. He had mistaken restraint for fear, and he was about to cross a line from which there would be no return. Chapter 3. The line that should never be crossed. The warning had been sent. The answer never came. Across the galaxy, governments watched and waited, hoping Supreme Director Vaylor Kryn would recognize the danger and step back before events slipped beyond control. Instead, Dominion shipyards accelerated production. Fleet movements increased. Intelligence channels reported unusual military activity. Commander Elias Ward noticed every detail. He stood inside the operations center aboard the diplomatic cruiser Resolute, studying a tactical display filled with shifting lights. "They're positioning strike groups," Marachin said. Elias nodded. "I know. You think they're preparing for war?" He stared at the map for several seconds. "No." Mara frowned. "Then what?" "They still don't believe one is coming." That was the real problem. Vaylor had spent months provoking humanity without consequences. Every successful escalation reinforced his confidence. He had convinced himself the warnings were empty. People who believed their own myths often became dangerous. People who believed their own lies became fatal. Days later, a massive humanitarian convoy departed from Citadel Prime. The operation had been organized jointly by multiple member worlds of the Galactic Accord. Dozens of transport vessels carried medical equipment, food supplies, reconstruction materials, and refugee support systems. It was one of the largest relief missions in recent memory. News networks followed its journey across several sectors. The convoy represented cooperation at a time when the galaxy desperately needed stability. Families watched broadcasts. Governments praised the effort. For a brief moment, attention shifted away from the growing crisis. Then Vaylor made his decision. Inside Dominion Central Command, several advisors stood around a holographic projection of the convoy's route. The room felt tense. One officer cleared his throat. "Director, I strongly advise against this." Vaylor folded his arms. "Why?" "The convoy includes civilians from 23 species." "Exactly." Another advisor stepped forward. "If anything happens to those ships, every government will react." Vaylor looked unimpressed. Humanity needs humiliation, not another warning, not another political argument. Silence followed. Nobody agreed. Nobody challenged him further. His authority was absolute. The order was transmitted. Hours later, Dominion warships emerged from hyperspace near the convoy's projected path. The attack began without warning. Energy beams tore through the darkness. The lead transport exploded instantly. Shock waves rippled across nearby vessels. Emergency signals flooded communication channels. Panic spread through the formation. Medical ships attempted evasive maneuvers. They never had a chance. Another barrage struck. Hull sections shattered. Life support systems failed. Escape pods launched into open space. Several were destroyed before reaching safe distance. The entire assault lasted less than 12 minutes. 12 minutes. Thousands died. Millions watched. Because this time the convoy had been broadcasting live. Every network across the galaxy received the transmission. Citizens saw ships burning. Rescue crews screaming for help. Families trapped aboard collapsing vessels. The footage spread faster than any official report. By the time the attack ended, outrage had already begun. Emergency sessions were called throughout the Galactic Accord. Political rivals suddenly agreed on something. The attack had crossed every acceptable boundary. Even governments traditionally sympathetic to the Dominion condemned the massacre. On Citadel Prime, Elias stood in complete silence as casualty estimates appeared on a screen. The number continued rising. He watched rescue footage from the wreckage. Floating debris. Destroyed transports. Emergency beacons blinking in endless darkness. Nobody spoke. Nobody needed to. Eventually, Mara broke the silence. They attack a relief mission. Elias nodded once. "Yes." They knew civilians were aboard. "Yes." The room became quiet again. Hours later, humanity's leadership gathered in a secure chamber inaccessible to outside networks. Military officials, political leaders, Alliance representatives. The discussion lasted 17 minutes. No arguments occurred. No debate followed. Everyone already understood. Humanity had tolerated sabotage, economic disruption, proxy attacks, civilian deaths, diplomatic humiliation. Every opportunity to stop had been provided. Vaylor ignored them all. The vote was unanimous. When the meeting ended, dormant protocols activated across human space. Deep within hidden facilities, strategic systems awakened. Reserve fleets received orders. Logistics networks shifted into wartime configuration. Long-prepared contingency plans moved from theory into reality. Observers across the galaxy watched in disbelief. Human warships emerged from secure locations that many governments never knew existed. Supply depots opened. Alliance communication channels activated simultaneously. Humanity had not spent years being passive. Humanity had spent years preparing for the possibility that patience might someday fail. A young analyst aboard Citadel Prime stared at the incoming data. How long have these plans existed? His supervisor answered quietly. Decades. Across hundreds of systems, military readiness surged with frightening efficiency. No panic, no confusion, only execution. Elias received his orders shortly afterward. Command authority over a coalition response force. Mission objective: end the threat, protect civilians, restore peace. Nothing more, nothing less. Several hours later, every major military network in known space received a transmission from humanity. The message contained a single sentence. No threats, no speeches, no demands. Just 6 words. You were warned. When the transmission reached Dominion Central Command, the confidence vanished from Vaylor's face for the first time. Reports flooded his office. Human fleets appearing everywhere. Alliance mobilization. Strategic deployments. Prepared responses, not reactions. Preparations. The realization struck him slowly. This had not begun today. Humanity had anticipated this possibility long ago. For the first time since challenging them, doubt entered his mind. And for the first time, he wondered whether the old rule had never been a myth at all. The war had begun, and the galaxy was about to discover why humanity spent so much effort trying to avoid one. Chapter 4. Why the Rule Exists. The war lasted 23 days. Many expected years. Military analysts predicted enormous battles stretching across hundreds of systems. Dominion commanders prepared for brutal attrition. News networks braced for a catastrophe that would reshape the galaxy. None of it happened. Humanity fought differently. Within hours of the declaration, Dominion communications began failing. Strategic relays disappeared. Supply routes collapsed. Fuel depots were seized or disabled. Fleet coordination fractured. Every strike targeted infrastructure supporting the war effort. Civilian worlds remained untouched. Hospitals continued operating. Population centers remained intact. The contrast shocked observers. Humanity possessed the ability to cause devastation. Instead, it dismantled the Dominion with surgical precision. Commander Elias Ward watched the campaign unfold from the flagship Resolute. Reports arrived constantly. One victory after another. A logistics hub surrendered without resistance. A naval shipyard lost power and shut down. 3 Dominion fleets were isolated before they could unite. No grand offensives. No reckless charges. Only careful execution. Mara studied a tactical display. How are they staying ahead of every response? Elias glanced at the map. They spent years assuming this day might come. Across Dominion territory, panic replaced confidence. Supreme Director Vaylor Kryn stood inside Central Command as disaster unfolded around him. Officers rushed between stations. Emergency alerts filled the chamber. Entire sectors stopped responding. A commander approached him. Fleet 12 surrendered. Vaylor turned sharply. Surrendered? They were cut off. No reinforcements. No supplies. Another officer interrupted. Fleet 9 just withdrew. A third arrived moments later. We lost contact with 3 strategic stations. The reports never stopped. For the first time in his career, Vaylor found himself reacting instead of controlling events. The enemy he had mocked was always one step ahead. Days later, a decisive engagement occurred near the Vector corridor. The Dominion assembled its largest remaining force. Hundreds of warships, thousands of fighters, everything they could still deploy. Military observers expected a climactic battle. Instead, human commanders bypassed the formation entirely. Electronic warfare blinded sensors. Decoys scattered the fleet. Supply vessels were captured. Command ships were isolated. Within hours, the entire force became operationally useless. The battle ended before it truly began. Watching from neutral territory, galactic governments finally understood the old stories. Humanity's reputation had never been built on superior weapons. It came from preparation, adaptability, coordination, patience, the very qualities many had mistaken for weakness. As the Dominion crumbled, worlds previously occupied by Vaylor's regime regained their independence. Human relief teams followed closely behind military units. Food shipments arrived. Medical aid followed. Reconstruction began immediately. Former enemies received assistance alongside allies that surprised the galaxy almost as much as the victory itself. Eventually, only one stronghold remained: Dominion Central Command, the heart of Vaylor's empire. A human coalition fleet surrounded the system. Escape was impossible. Defeat was certain. Inside the command center, silence replaced the frantic energy of previous days. Many officers had already left. Others surrendered. Some simply walked away. Vaylor stood alone before a darkened viewport. The empire he spent decades building had collapsed in less than a month. A communications officer approached nervously. "Sir, Commander Ward is requesting direct contact." Vaylor closed his eyes briefly. "Put him through." A hologram materialized. Elias appeared calm as ever. No triumph, no arrogance, no anger, just quiet professionalism. For several seconds, neither man spoke. Finally, Vaylor broke the silence. "You've won." "Yes." "You came for revenge?" Elias shook his head. "No." That answer genuinely surprised him. "Then why are you here?" "To end this." The simplicity felt almost insulting. Vaylor laughed bitterly. "You destroyed my empire." "You destroyed it," Elias replied. "We stopped you." The words landed harder than any accusation. Elias continued, "We are offering surrender terms." Vaylor stared at him. "Even now? After everything?" The conditions appeared on the display. Immediate ceasefire. Release of occupied worlds. War Crimes Tribunal. Reconstruction cooperation. No executions. No extermination. No humiliation. Just accountability. For the first time, Vaylor understood what it failed to see from the beginning. Humanity never avoided conflict because it feared defeat. Humanity avoided conflict because it understood consequences. The warnings had been sincere. Every diplomatic message, every negotiation, every opportunity. They genuinely wanted peace. He had mistaken restraint for weakness, patience for fear, mercy for vulnerability. The realization arrived too late. Slowly, Vaylor lowered his head. "I accept." The war ended that day. Months later, reconstruction efforts continued across former battle zones. Human engineers repaired infrastructure. Medical teams treated civilians regardless of species or allegiance. The galaxy watched in disbelief. Humanity had defeated its enemy and then helped rebuild it. At the Galactic War Academy, a new class of cadets filled the lecture hall. Professor Terrell stood before them. Behind him appeared images from the Dominion War. No one laughed. No one whispered. The lesson required no introduction. Terrell looked across the room. Humanity is not feared because it enjoys war. Absolute silence. It is feared because it will endure almost anything to prevent one. The display changed. A single sentence appeared. The same rule taught for centuries. Now reinforced by recent history. Never bother humans. This time, every cadet understood why. The end.